So today,
Yeah.
we're diving deep into one that really caught our attention.
Okay.
It's Sadhguru's take on death.
Oh, wow.
Specifically his book,
But-
with the rather blunt title,
Yeah.
Death, an Inside Story, a book for all those who shall die.
I know, right?
No sugarcoating there.
It definitely makes you stop and think.
Yeah.
And, as we dug into this book, it became clear that Sadhguru doesn't approach death with, the usual somberness.
Yeah.
He weaves in humor and personal stories, even a bit of playfulness to try to shed light on what most people just try to avoid thinking about.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that he frames death not as an ending,
Right.
but almost as like a companion throughout life.
Oh.
He believes that being aware of death actually makes life more vibrant and purposeful.
That's a powerful thought.
Yeah.
I'm curious, have you ever had an experience that really brought the fragility of life into focus? Maybe the loss of someone close or even a near-miss situation.
Yeah.
Let us know in the comments because it's those moments that often kind of reshape our priorities.
Yeah, definitely. Sadhguru had one of those moments as a child, actually.
Oh, really?
He recounts the sudden passing of a classmate,
Wow.
a young girl who was there one day and gone the next.
Oh, my gosh.
And it was just this stark realization that death can touch anyone anytime.
Yeah.
And it kind of ignited this lifelong quest to understand what death truly means.
It's almost like it sparked a curiosity in him rather than just fear.
Yeah, exactly.
And this curiosity led him to some pretty profound experiences.
Uh-huh.
He describes sitting on a rock one day and having this incredible feeling of merging with everything around him.
Wow.
He says his inside became his outside,
Okay.
and he no longer felt separate from the rocks, the trees, the entire world.
It was a moment of realizing that the self,
Yeah.
the I that we identify with,
Right.
isn't limited to the physical body.
Right.
And that realization completely shifted his perspective on death. It became less about the body ceasing to exist and more about a transformation, a shift in consciousness.
So if death isn't the end, what does it mean to die?
Right.
Well, Sadhguru dives into this by exploring the concept of memory,
Okay.
specifically what he calls karmic memory.
Right.
He explains that we carry impressions from not just this life, but also past lives.
Yeah.
And those impressions influence who we are and the choices we make.
Think of it like a hidden blueprint that shapes our tendencies and inclinations.
Okay.
And within this karmic memory, there's a certain amount of energy allocated for activity in this lifetime.
Interesting.
Sadhguru observes that even babies exhibit different levels of activity from birth.
Yeah.
Some being naturally calm, while others are just bundles of energy.
That's fascinating to think about. He even suggests that actively expending this energy through things like exercise or spending time in nature can actually create more space for inner exploration.
Right.
It's almost like clearing the clutter, both physically and energetically, to prepare for what lies beyond this life.
Exactly. And to understand the mechanics of death itself, Sadhguru introduces the concept of the Panchapranas,
Okay.
which are 5 vital energies that govern our life functions.
Got it.
We could spend hours going into the nuances of each one.
Sure.
But what's really intriguing is how they play a role in the process of dying.
He gives the example of Samanavayu, the energy that regulates body temperature.
Okay.
He describes these Himalayan sadhus who can withstand freezing temperatures because they've mastered this prana. It's like they've tapped into a hidden potential within the human system.
Then there's Udanavayu,
Okay.
the energy of buoyancy, which Sadhguru links to the incredible feats of athletes who seem to defy gravity. He even shares a personal story about being declared dead during an experiment,
Oh my gosh.
but knowing he wasn't because he could still perceive these pranas within him.
It makes you wonder what we really define as death. Is it the cessation of bodily functions?
Yeah.
Or is there something more?
That's the big question.
Sadhguru goes on to explain that the way these pranas leave the body can actually indicate the state of consciousness at the time of death.
Interesting.
He even describes the possibility of cheating death,
Oh.
or at least delaying it through yogic practices.
Okay.
But he's pretty skeptical about things like cryogenics.
Yeah.
He sees it as simply keeping organs alive,
Right.
not the essence of a person.
It goes back to that idea of the self being more than just the physical body.
So if death isn't just about the body, what happens to that essence?
Well, that takes us into some pretty mind-bending territory,
Oh.
including transmigration, where consciousness is transferred from one body to another.
Wow.
Sadhguru even mentions Mahasamadhi,
Okay.
a conscious and intentional leaving of the body.
This is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
He tells the story of his own wife, Vijji, choosing Mahasamadhi.
Wow.
It's a powerful example of the level of awareness and mastery that's possible.
Absolutely.
And it brings up a lot of questions about how we prepare for death, how we face that ultimate unknown.
Right.
Exactly. We'll delve deeper into those questions in part 2,
Okay.
including Sadhguru's insights on dealing with fear, navigating grief, and even the possibility of encountering those who haven't fully moved on.
It's going to be fascinating.
Stay tuned.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Sadhguru's perspective on death.
So last time we kind of left off with this idea that death isn't just about the body stopping,
Right.
but like a transformation of consciousness.
Exactly.
So can we predict this transformation? Can we see death coming?
That's a great question. You know, Sadhguru acknowledges that certain individuals might have glimpses into the future,
Okay.
but he also points out that those glimpses are often limited
Yeah.
and even exaggerated. He encourages us to focus less on predicting like the when and how of death,
Right.
and more on just living fully in the present moment.
Makes sense.
After all, that's the only time we truly have control.
He does, however, talk about certain signs that might indicate death is approaching.
Okay.
For example, he mentions that as someone's prarabdha karma, their karmic allotment for this life,
Right.
starts to run out,
Yeah.
they might start behaving differently or saying things that seem out of character.
Oh.
It's like they're unconsciously sensing a shift on the horizon.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
He even talks about being able to smell death,
What?
a specific odor associated with the exit of the pranas,
Oh, wow.
those vital energies we discussed earlier. And get this, he says you can even smell a ghost.
Smell a ghost.
And that's something I need to understand better.
Well, Sadhguru explains that ghosts or disembodied beings
Right.
still have a subtle physical form,
Okay.
and that form can be perceived through smell.
Interesting.
His dogs are particularly sensitive to this. Oh, which might explain why they sometimes react to things we can't see.
So it's not just spooky stories.
Right.
There could be like a scientific basis for those ghost hunting dogs.
Exactly. But moving from the sensory aspects of death
Yeah.
to something a bit heavier.
Okay.
Sadhguru also delves into the ethics of causing harm, even death,
Wow.
through certain practices. He doesn't shy away from the dark side of spirituality.
He mentions specific rituals,
Yeah.
particularly within the tantric tradition,
Right.
that can be used for negative purposes, including inflicting illness or even death.
It's a sobering reminder that power, whether physical or spiritual,
Yeah,
can be misused.
definitely. But thankfully, Sadhguru says acquiring these capabilities requires intense effort
Right.
and carries significant risks,
Yeah.
which deters most people from pursuing them.
He also points out how fear is often used as a tool for manipulation.
Okay.
He gives a funny example of a salesman who purposely throws cow dung on a carpet
Right.
just to demonstrate the power of his vacuum cleaner.
Oh my gosh.
He's playing on the homeowner's fear of a ruined carpet to make a sale.
It's a silly story, but it highlights how susceptible we are to fear tactics.
Absolutely. And speaking of fear,
Yeah.
Sadhguru doesn't hold back when addressing the topic of suicide.
I calls it a permanent solution to a temporary problem,
Right.
rooted in ignorance about the true nature of life and death.
He describes various reasons why someone might contemplate suicide,
Okay.
from feeling overwhelmed by emotions or difficult situations
Right.
to simply not knowing how to handle the complexities of life.
He even mentions a small percentage of people who simply feel drawn to death for no particular reason.
Yeah.
It's a reminder of the vast spectrum of human experience.
Right.
And how little we truly understand about the workings of the mind.
But Sadhguru doesn't just present the problem.
Right.
He offers potential solutions.
Okay.
He emphasizes the importance of seeking help finding support systems
Yeah.
and remembering that even the darkest moments will eventually pass. He also challenges us to find that tomato sauce in life.
The what?
Those things that bring us joy and make us want to keep going,
Oh.
even when things get tough.
It's about finding those sparks of light
Yeah,
that make life worth living,
right.
even in the midst of darkness. Now, shifting gears a bit,
Okay.
Sadhguru also discusses the concept of Varnashrama Dharma,
What's that?
the ancient Indian system of dividing life into 4 stages.
Oh, interesting.
It's like a roadmap for living a fulfilling life, and
Okay.
each stage having specific goals and practices.
So what are the 4 stages?
The 4 stages are Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyasa.
Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyasa.
Exactly.
Okay, so tell me about these a little bit more.
Sure. Brahmacharya is the student phase focused on learning and self-discipline.
Okay.
Grihastha is the householder phase,
Uh-huh.
where family and worldly responsibilities take center stage.
Got it.
Vanaprastha is the retirement phase,
Okay.
where one starts to withdraw from those worldly pursuits. And finally, sannyasa is the renunciate phase,
Okay.
where the focus is solely on seeking spiritual liberation.
It's not a rigid system, right?
No, not at all. It's more like a set of guidelines
Right.
for living consciously and purposefully
Yeah.
throughout the different chapters of life.
Sadhguru highlights the importance of each stage,
Yeah.
even in modern times.
Right.
For example, he encourages people to embrace the Vanaprastha phase,
Okay.
even if it doesn't literally involve moving to a forest.
Yeah, it's about creating space for introspection
Right.
and spiritual exploration regardless of our age or circumstances.
He even discusses the practice of salakana,
Oh, yeah.
a Jain ritual of fasting to death,
Right.
which was traditionally undertaken after careful consideration
Uh-huh.
and with the support of the community.
He emphasizes that it's not about suicide,
Okay.
but about consciously choosing to end one's life
Yeah.
in a dignified and spiritual way.
It's a powerful example of how different cultures approach death
Yeah,
and the transition beyond.
absolutely. And speaking of different approaches,
Okay.
Sadhguru shares some interesting insights about the city of Kashi,
Kashi.
also known as Varanasi.
Okay.
It's a sacred city in India known for its cremation ghats on the banks of the Ganges River.
I've heard of that.
He describes Kashi as a place where death isn't hidden away,
Right.
but embraced as a natural part of life.
Interesting.
He says that even visiting Kashi can have a profound impact,
Oh.
as it confronts us with the reality of our own mortality.
It's a stark reminder that death is inevitable. Yeah. And that we should make the most of our time on this earth.
But what happens after we die?
That's the question that keeps circling back, isn't it?
It is. Sadhguru offers some possibilities,
Like what?
including the existence of ghosts and the concept of reincarnation.
Oh, okay.
But he approaches these topics with a groundedness
Right.
that avoids sensationalism.
For example, he describes ghosts as simply disembodied beings.
Right.
Who haven't yet found their way.
Exactly.
They're not inherently evil or malicious, just confused and disoriented.
He even shares his own experience with a disembodied cobra biting him.
Why? A disembodied cobra.
It's a wild story, but it highlights the energetic nature of these encounters.
Right. He emphasizes that it's usually about energetic connections.
Yeah.
Not intentional harm.
And when it comes to reincarnation,
Okay.
he sees it as a process of memory, not a literal rebirth of the personality.
He cautions against getting too caught up in past life memories,
Yeah.
as it can create chaos in the present moment.
You're right.
It's not about judging past lives,
No.
but about understanding the continuity of the being.
And for those wondering if soulmates reunite in future lives,
Oh, yeah.
Sadhguru debunks that idea,
They-
stating that relationships are based on karmic connections,
What?
not romantic love.
So even the deepest bonds we form in this life might manifest differently in future lifetimes.
Exactly. But here's a thought-provoking question for you as we wrap up this part of our deep dive.
Okay.
What role do rituals play in navigating death, both for the dying and for those left behind?
It's a question worth pondering. We'll explore Sadhguru's perspectives on this.
Yes.
As well as his insights on supporting the dying and finding peace in the face of loss
Absolutely.
in part 3 of our deep dive. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been exploring Sadhguru's perspective on death.
Right.
And in this final part, we're going to focus on how to navigate this inevitable transition
Okay.
with grace and awareness, both for those approaching death and those left behind.
It's a topic that often brings up a lot of fear and uncertainty,
Yeah.
but Sadhguru offers a refreshingly practical approach,
Okay.
emphasizing the importance of creating a supportive and peaceful environment for those who are transitioning.
He talks about the significance of the last moments of life and how they can impact the journey of the soul.
Right.
He even provides specific guidance on things like positioning the body,
Okay.
the use of chants or rituals,
Yeah.
and the importance of not leaving the person alone during those final moments.
Yeah. It's about recognizing that even in death, life is still unfolding.
Right.
And creating a space of reverence and respect for that process.
Sadhguru also addresses some of the more practical questions that come up,
Like what?
like the decision of whether to cremate or bury the body.
Oh, okay.
He explains that cremation is traditionally preferred in India,
Yeah.
as it's seen as a way to completely dissolve the physical form
Right.
and prevent any lingering attachment.
He acknowledges that burial can also be appropriate,
Right.
particularly for those who have died consciously or peacefully.
Okay.
Ultimately, it's about making choices that align with the individual's journey
Yeah.
and the beliefs of their culture.
He even talks about the tradition of bringing the body home before the final rites,
Oh, yeah.
explaining that this was once important
Uh-huh.
because people's diets and lifestyles
Right.
were closely tied to their local environment.
Okay.
Bringing the body home was a way to reconnect with that familiar energy.
But in today's world where
Oh.
people travel and interact globally, that connection might not be as significant.
Makes sense.
He emphasizes that the focus should be on supporting the soul's transition,
Right.
not rigidly adhering to outdated customs.
Speaking of customs,
Okay.
he also addresses the tradition of dispersing the ashes in a river.
Yeah.
He explains that this is done to prevent the soul from becoming attached to a particular location and to encourage it to move on and embrace its new state of being.
He also mentions a more practical reason.
Oh.
Scattering the ashes prevents them from being misused,
Okay.
particularly by those who practice sorcery or black magic.
It's a reminder that even in death, there are those who might seek to exploit or manipulate energy.
Right.
But what about organ donation? Is that compatible with spiritual practices?
Sadhguru sees no conflict there.
Okay.
He views it as a generous act that can benefit others.
Yeah.
And even encourages people to consider it as a way to make their death meaningful,
Right.
to give back to life even as they're leaving it.
It's a powerful perspective that challenges us to think beyond our own individual needs, even in death.
Absolutely. Now, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about grief.
Okay. How do we cope with the loss of someone we love?
Sadhguru offers a perspective that might surprise some people. He says that true grief arises from unresolved bonds with the deceased. When we cling to those bonds,
Yeah.
we create suffering for ourselves and hinder the soul's transition.
He emphasizes the importance of letting go,
Right.
of accepting that the relationship has transformed, not ended.
He also talks about the role of after-death rituals
Okay.
in helping to dissolve those bonds
Rest.
and ensure well-being for both the living and the deceased.
It's about finding closure, honoring the relationship, and supporting the soul's journey forward.
Exactly. He even mentions a powerful ritual offered at Isha
Really?
called Kalabhairava Karma,
Okay.
which is specifically designed to break the karmic web with the deceased
Oh.
and facilitate their liberation.
It's a reminder that even after death, there are things we can do to support those we love.
And what about those who don't move on smoothly? What about those who get stuck as ghosts?
Sadhguru has a lot to say about that.
Okay.
He explains that ghosts are simply disembodied beings who haven't found their way.
Right.
They're not inherently evil or malicious,
No.
but they can be confused and disoriented.
He shares his own experience with a disembodied cobra,
Yeah.
emphasizing that these encounters are usually due to energetic connections,
Right.
not malicious intent.
He also talks about how we can help these beings move on, using rituals and practices to dissolve their attachments and guide them toward liberation.
It's a compassionate perspective that challenges us to see even ghosts as beings in need of support.
And this brings us back to the question of reincarnation. Do we really come back? And if so, what happens to our relationships?
Sadhguru sees past lives as compartments of memory,
Okay.
not literal rebirths of the personality.
Yeah.
He cautions against getting too caught up in those memories. As it can create chaos in the present moment, it's not about judging past lives, but about understanding the continuity of the being.
And for those wondering about soulmates reuniting in future lives,
Right.
Sadhguru debunks that idea,
He does.
stating that relationships are based on karmic connections, not romantic love.
So even the deepest bonds we form in this life
Yeah.
might manifest in different ways in future lifetimes.
But before we wrap up, let's address the question that's probably on many minds. What about Sadhguru himself? Will he return?
He playfully claims his expiry date is over,
Oh.
but that his presence will be even stronger for 80 years after his physical death. It's a lighthearted statement,
Right.
but it reflects his deep commitment to guiding seekers toward liberation,
Yeah.
even beyond his physical presence.
So as we conclude this deep dive into Sadhguru's perspective on death,
Right.
we're left with a lot to contemplate.
Yeah.
He challenges us to see death not as an ending,
Yeah.
but as a transformation, an opportunity for liberation.
He encourages us to live fully in the present moment, knowing that death is not something to fear, but a natural part of life's cycle.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from the mechanics of dying to the spiritual implications. What insights have resonated with you? What questions are still swirling in your mind? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below.
And if you're craving more deep dives into fascinating topics, Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. We're always exploring new ideas and perspectives, helping you make sense of the world around us.
Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.